Chamber of Commerce. This is something that we're doing, manufacturing networking. And we're trying to do some topics where are relevant. And you know, through the year we've had stop and start, but we take the challenges and we move them forward. So today, I'd first like to introduce the manufacturing committee for the networking. So Joe Brewer is on the team, Dee Skinner, Ford Motor Company, Mark Losey, DTE, and Steve Eaton, who is not in attendance today, from RCC Computers, and myself. Kelly Stevens, our executive director from the chamber back there, and Debbie Cisco, both in attendance today. So with that, today we have a great topic, building and nurturing the manufacturing workforce. Wow, you know, a lot to talk about there. We're going to have a live panel, and to start with, I'd like to introduce our moderator. We have Brooke Brewer from Metro Electric, and she's going to be asking the questions and engaging our experts. And with that, I'd like to bring up some people to introduce the panel. So, Mark?
Hi, Mark Losey. Steve has mentioned, I'm one of the board members of the Greater Romeo Chamber of Commerce, and I also have the pleasure to work with the gentleman that I'm going to be introducing to you today, Dr. Dean Dowd, also from DTE. Just to kind of give you a little quick background on him from his bio. He's a business relation IT manager for DTE. He's been there since 2001. Kind of heads up some of our HR, organizational development, and public affairs, internal audit as well. He's has an organizational and management development strategy that he's entitled to Transition Triangle, and he will enlighten us with some of that conversation today. He's also co-authored a couple of books, Nothing But Net, which kind of talks about leading speakers, trainers, and the entrepreneur revival and top secrets for increasing the bottom line health, which everybody and anybody wants to do these days. And also, he sits on a lot of boards and does a lot of great work as well. So he's on the board of directors of the Winning Futures, basically a good nonprofit organization. He's an adjunct professor, organizational development at Davenport, MBA and executive MBA programs. He also does a lot of work for the community as well. So with that, I'd like to thank Dean for joining us today.
Good morning. I'm Dee Skinner. I'm the plant manager of the Ford Romeo engine plant just up the road. I'm here to introduce one of my colleagues, Tom Reber. Tom has over 30 years with Ford. He is currently the operations manager on the Windsor site, where we have 2 engine plants there. When we talked about the topic of the workplace and development, Tom came to mind as a speaker because he is the lead of a group that we call Men as Allies, right? And as Men as Allies, it's part of an employee resource group for women of Ford in manufacturing. And we're an underrepresented group. As most people know, it's hard to get women coming into manufacturing. And as we're learning more of how to attract people, one of the things it says women can't bring in enough women by themselves because there's not enough of us. So we need the men to be our allies. And so Tom has stepped up to that role and lead that organization, partially because Tom's background, like I said, he has 30 years within Ford, all within manufacturing, but he's worked at various plants. He's been a plant manager at 2 locations, assistant plant manager, manufacturing engineer. He's spent time in Japan, time in the UK. So very diverse and versatile over within Ford Motor Company. Plus he has 4 children, 3 of whom are daughters. So with that experience, with how they want to get into the business, how can you help them? So, he's a great asset and ally, and so he's gonna tell us a little bit about that program within Ford and how we're helping to attract and actually be an advocate for the group. All right, thank you very much, and appreciate you being here, Tom.
He's a hockey goalie.
Yeah.
I have the pleasure to introduce Don Hutchinson. Don is the Dean of Engineering and Advanced Technologies at Macomb Community College. He's managed a wide array of STEM-related degrees and certificate programs. Done a lot of federal funding grants, workforce and continuous education boot camps and development, and college apprenticeship programs. Native of Detroit and a graduate of the Focus Hope Machinist training program. So right from the ground up into getting a degree, bachelor's degree at Lawrence Tech University and a master's in science in manufacturing operations at Kettering. So she's been employed in the workforce at General Motors for 10 years plus, held several positions in design, so he's done the work. What a rounded experience. Got to travel with GM in North America and Europe. And of course, a family man, 31 years, married and 3 children, and he resides in Lake Orion. So with that, please help me welcome Don. And last but not least, my fellow coworker, Jay Krozek. Jay, 22 years at L&L Products. He started in manufacturing, worked in R&D, held several positions in HR, and then he went on a little tour, got experience in a lot of other companies, and then we brought him back, the director of HR, where he is in position today. He's doing a lot of great things. He's involved heavily in the community, resides, or was born and went to high school in Elmont, close by, resides in Washington Township. Married to Emily 19 years and has 2 children and 4 boxers, which I'm sure will keep her busy. So please help me welcome Jay Krozek. So with that, I think we're ready to rock and roll. Brooke, why don't you take it away? We have some questions that we can go through, and go ahead and knock your microphone in. Yeah. We're gonna pass this one.
There we go. Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming, and welcome, and thank you panelists for coming. So we've got a couple topics that we are going to cover on our subject of just manufacturing. So we're going to cover diversity and inclusion in the workplace, education and skill gap development, and hiring and retaining talent best practices. So I want to start with the subject of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So our first question, what do you feel diversity and inclusion is important in manufacturing? Does anyone want to take that question first?
Hi. So from my perspective, I think diversity and inclusion can promote innovation. It brings a broader range of ideas, more dynamic interactions. Manufacturing tends to be male dominated, so obviously the more you can get women and other ethnicities and everyone involved, I think it just gives a broader range of ideas and more perspectives.
So I think diversity and inclusion is important in everything, anything and everything we do. We're humans. It's part of life. We're all different, and yes, it's extremely important in manufacturing. It's extremely important everywhere else. The best ideas, the best productivity, the most efficient is when groups of people come together and we value everybody's opinion. And groups of like people are going to come up with like examples. I was just in a course yesterday and we were talking about if we have a very like-minded white male and a very like-minded white male, or any like-minded people, put them together, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It equals 1. It's the same, right? We're not getting any differences, right? So the diversity is really, really important. And, you know, when we talk about diversity, it's diversity of, you know, gender, race, sexual orientation, religion, and also diversity of thought. We all have our own biases. We were all raised differently, right? And so we're looking for all of that. So it's extremely important. It's how you build a very, very powerful company. I think it makes a huge difference. But having diversity is only one part of it, right? What we don't talk about enough is having inclusion, because you can go out and hire the most diverse workforce that you can possibly get, but if people don't feel included, they're not going to bring their biases, their values to the table. So we really need to work on that inclusion part and make sure that the diversity that we bring in, we're getting the most out of, and that we're making sure that people really want to be there, they feel like they belong, and that we respect the value that they're bringing to us. So I think if your organization isn't focused on diversity and inclusion, I think you have a real opportunity.
Thank you. I think it benefits everyone when we have diversity, right? It just makes sense. You know, in our country, we have perhaps a sketchy past when it comes to including everyone. And there are so many individuals out there with the talent, the skills, the abilities to make life better for everyone. You know, as was mentioned in my bio, I was born and raised in Detroit, went to a nonprofit organization to learn the skill of manufacturing or machining and manufacturing. And I was surrounded by a lot of guys like me from the inner city who didn't have a background in manufacturing, but these men were brilliant, just brilliant, and they had so much talent, so much potential, but because of the socio-economic factors that prevented them from really being included in manufacturing as they could have been, you know, everyone missed out. Not just them, but everyone missed out on the talents that they had and those abilities that they had. So I think when we have the opportunity to include everyone, it benefits everyone. And you know, the more we can do away with the exclusionary practices that that have happened in the past, these are the things that we can now overcome. And as a result, our businesses are going to thrive, our communities are going to thrive, and everyone is going to benefit together.
I think it's been well said already. I just had this one small thing. It's a differentiator. If your company is not focusing on this, then you're going to find yourself falling behind in the industry, whatever industry that is, manufacturing in this case. Right? It will differentiate you from your competitors, right? Because of all these things that these gentlemen said. Right? It brings innovation. It brings new ideas. It brings different ideas, different voices to the table. And if you're not getting that, and other companies are, guess what you're going to find yourself, right? So it's a bottom line differentiator.
Well, thank you guys. Dr. Dayan, this question is for you next. So what tools and programs does DTE employ in the workplace around this topic?
Excellent. So we have, probably like many of the other companies represented here, we have our ERG groups that help bring some of those inclusion topics to bear. We've set up a structure, a governance structure inside of DTE that starts with our CEO. So we started like most companies from the bottom, right? Trying to grow this grassroots, and what we found is that didn't work very well. We needed this from the top down. And so our CEO now heads up an executive steering committee that helps us continue to move the ball forward. He pushes us on a regular basis to try to make change. That then rolls down into, we've now created a diversity, equity, and inclusion department. It's headed up with the director and her team. That rolls down into our ERGs, and our business unit also has DEI in it. So I head up our IT, diversity, equity, and inclusion organization, and we do many things specifically in IT. We have 3 kind of subcommittees. That is leadership, which is focused on the culture, the community, and the workforce. We have a metrics committee, because we kind of like manufacturing. We want to know where we are, right? So we're measuring everything. But we were hesitant to start there. So people said, hey, we know how to run this play, right? We do this all the time at DTE. We say what we want, we start to measure, we figure out where our gaps are, and we attack it. And we were cautioned not to do that with DEI. Because these are people, these aren't widgets, right? And if you start in that path of white man at the top saying, here's our gaps and here's what we gotta attack, then you may just get an issue that that is uncovered that you weren't expecting, and it could be detrimental. And so we backed off and we just started listening to it. We started to listen to what was going on in the organization. And so that has been one of the tools, is just the executives do these listening tours. We'll do the organization and just listen. What is going on? How are you feeling? What issues are we dealing with in terms of DEI, and inclusion is where we are. We haven't even begun to attack equity, right? Because we first got diversity, we've got a pretty good handle on. We've got a good mix of people, right? When you look at the different levels and different things that are going on. But it's inclusion. Just because we have a diverse set of people at the table doesn't mean everybody feels included, right? How many women sit at the table and are not heard? That's not inclusion. You can say we're diverse, they're at the table. But I've been in meetings where a woman comes up with a wonderful idea, overlooked. Man comes up with the same idea and they say, oh, that's beautiful. Love that idea. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Didn't she just say the same thing? So that is some of the things we're working on. The governance structure really helps us make sure we stay aligned with the company and where it's going, so that our ERGs and our business units also stay in line with that.
Thank you very much. This question's for Tom. Along the lines of diversity and inclusion, what have you found that get people engaged across the organization?
So there's a number of things that works. I'll start with, I'll start with myself. I think the most effective way to get people engaged is to go ask them. Go directly ask them to get engaged. And there's certain individuals in your organization that you know will be really great in leading those types of efforts, but they haven't allocated any time to it yet. So Dee was talking about my engagement in the Women of Ford group, ERG at Ford Motor Company. You know, the Women of Ford group was in existence for a long time, and as Dee mentioned, when you have a minority group, which all of the ERGs are, it's very difficult and frustrating for them to come together and talk about their problems. They can't solve their problems, right? They really need the majority representation to be part of that, to be good listeners, as Dan said, to understand what the issues are and really get the company to start working on those issues. And in my case, I had a group of very well-respected women that were part of leadership of the Women of Ford group come directly to me and ask me, Tom, can you please get involved? Can you please start leading a group of men that will be part of this, that could be part of the Women of Ford ERG? And quite honestly, it was a number of different women, very well-respected colleagues of mine, that came to me at different times over a few months period. And it really made me sit back and think, why, I don't really understand why they're coming to me. And this wasn't like a group effort. It was kind of random one-on-ones where we just had this discussion. And they selected me because they said I was a little bit different, that I understood the gender issue, which I didn't really actually know I understood it. I'm an engineer. I went to GMI Kettering. There wasn't a whole lot of humanity classes in engineering back then, right? And I was taught to be a An engineer, dig in, hard work, that was what was important. That's why I went to school. That was supporting my family. The humanities side was, as a leader, yes, I understood how to lead, but I really didn't get involved with the people side. All of us have different biases, and they kind of shape us into what our real values are. And what Dee didn't mention is I grew up in a house, a small house, in Allen Park with my mom, my dad, myself, and my 6 sisters. Did I mention there was 1 bathroom in that house? So, understandably that shapes my bias, right? And as a child, it was, everybody thought I was special because I was the only child, whatever. As I grew, I understood the gender equity issues. Not that, and I didn't know why I understood them, it was just part of my life. And then, as Steve mentioned, I had 3 daughters. And so when they came to me and said, you're different, it really made me sit back and think, why are you saying that? I really don't understand why you're saying that. And I had to digest that myself and understand that I really did understand. And I treated women very equitably, as everybody should, but it was just natural for me. And so I said, okay, I get it. I need to step up and I need to do something. This is one of these values. To have real integrity, I really need to act on my values, and I wasn't acting on that value. So I took the lead, and we built this group, which we can talk about later, of how to support these ERGs. But it was just somebody coming to me and saying, Tom, can you do this? We need you to do this. Women need you to do this. It wasn't my boss. It wasn't anybody above me. And the work I do today, people ask why I do it. Do you do it because you have daughters? Do you do it because you have sisters? No, I do it for the women that I've worked with for the last 30 years that asked me to do it, right? And I took that lesson actually, and I went to one of my managers in the past year who was one of my best managers. Really great engineer, great leader, great manager, did all the right things, but wasn't involved in the personal side, the people side of the business. And I asked him the same thing. I'd really like for you to lead our veterans group. We don't have a veterans group on our site. You are a veteran, and we need to recognize these people. We're not doing it well. And he went back and said, I don't have a lot of time for this. And then he came back to me and said, okay, you're right, I'm going to do it. And we now have a very active veterans group on our site. We're recognizing our veterans. We have some events for them. We have a wall, etc. It just takes you going out and asking people. Ask the right people, and I think they'll understand. So to me, that's the best way that we can really get people to take the reins of things. Ask them, and they'll know that you're counting on it, right? There's a lot of other ways we can engage people, right? We have a lot of educational stuff, lunch and learns. We have our ERGs, right? There's all sorts of things that are open to people. And we do get a lot of people that just volunteer their time and want to work on those. There's no end to doing that. We need to continue to offer that. But I bet every one of us has some really great people on our organization that we just need to tap them on the shoulder and say, you know what, we'd really love for you to step up and get engaged with this because you're the right person to go do that job.
Wonderful, thank you very much. This question is for Jay. What programs or methods have you implemented to successfully create a diverse and inclusive workforce?
So something that we've been doing recently is we're establishing partnerships with several local high schools, community colleges, trade schools, all over Michigan, really from here north of us down to Livonia. And what we're really trying to do is just establish this pipeline that we can use as like a win-win, right? So that we can go into these schools, we can show them what we're about, we can go in and give presentations and show people that, like, I think their idea of skilled trades, of what it might be like to go into skilled trades is different than what it really is today. It's at our facility, it's a very clean environment. We want to, meet girls graduating who may not be going off to college, who may want a career in manufacturing, and we have so many opportunities. So what we've done is we've identified probably 20 different schools, and we've taken our staff and divided them up into partners, men and women, who are on our leadership team, and they're contacts for different schools. And what we're doing is inviting the schools in, inviting the teachers in to bring classrooms of seniors or even younger, and see what we do, show them what we have, and establish a partnership so that maybe when they're ready to get out of school and they're not somebody that's going to go to a 4-year degree, or they want to go to a technical school or community college, we have opportunities for them. So we're trying to draw people to manufacturing and show them that it may not be exactly what they thought it was. That's really, that's kind of the main thing that we've been doing. We have focus groups at our work every month, and that's how, from an inclusion standpoint, we try to involve everyone, from our production technicians all the way throughout the company. So everybody gets invited once per year, and diversity and inclusion is one of the topics that we cover, and ask them, how do you feel we do with this? What would you like to see more of? And in order to make sure everybody is included, we do it by like employee anniversary. So they're all invited. Not everybody comes, but we're trying to just include everyone and just get them the most information that we can to make it what people want it to be, and then also reach out to attract new employees.
Wonderful, thank you. This question is for anybody who wants to answer, so whoever wants to take the mic. What is available for small manufacturing companies to explore the topic of diversity and inclusion?
I just have one thing on this is really, I think for smaller companies, we're a mid-sized company, right? So we're not the biggest, we're not the smallest. I think it's important to benchmark other organizations. We all have contacts, right? Reach out to somebody in the industry who is at a bigger company and see what they're doing. And we have, we're global. So over in Europe, we have one of our legal analysts who heads up our whole corporate social responsibility initiative. And I'm the lead here from an HR standpoint globally. And we have leads in each department who handle certain pieces of it. So it's something that we're getting better at each year, and we're getting certain awards and things through this Ecovitus program. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. We just got lucky and had somebody able to head it up for us. But I think if we were a smaller organization, I would be reaching out to bigger organizations to just kind of benchmark and see what are you doing, and try to, not reinvent the wheel.
So, I was thinking about this, there's this thing out there called the internet. And, if you Google the topic, it is endless, the amount of information that is out there on diversity and inclusion. Even if you Google something a little bit more specific, in my story, I Googled men as allies because I was asked to do something that I didn't have a clue of what I was being asked to do. I was amazed. There's just tons of information out there. There's groups, there's blogs, there's books. I mean, the books are endless. New York Times bestsellers, they're all out there, right? There's organizations. For example, for gender, there's a number of organizations, and of course you get on their email list, you get this information constantly, free, web seminars, etc. There's a group, leanin.org, if you're not familiar with it. It's completely set up free for a bunch of activities to engage your organization in gender issues, right? So the information out there is really just endless. You really just gotta go start digging and looking. And quite honestly, I don't think you need to pay a whole lot of money to do it either. It's really, there's a lot of self-help stuff out there, and it's free.
I would just add, Start with your culture. Make it a priority in your culture. And start like we did, it started that way. But start from the top. You gotta get your senior leadership involved early so they can help you with the strategy and help you figure out what your culture currently is and where you want your culture to go. So for us, that governance structure is super important because people know where they fit in the structure, where to go to when they have questions, so that structure is important. And then your culture is important because we do things like every meeting, safety is our number one priority. Probably the same in manufacturing. So we start every single meeting, I don't care what department, I don't care what the topic, I don't care who's leading, safety, word of the day, what's our safety word of the day? There's a safety reminder. We start every meeting with safety. Second topic, DEI. So we start to build that learning. We start to build the language into the culture. It gives people a chance to learn new terminology. It gives people a chance to ask questions, right? In an environment that is open to a dumb question, right? That's part of the cultural issue is I don't feel, comfortable asking questions. I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth, right? But I don't know how you do that often.
DEI, what is it?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, got it.
But you start to build this safe culture where no question is done. You might say, I'm a little uneasy. I don't know how this is going to come across, but I just want to say it this way. And initially, we got the, I can't believe you just said that, right? To now it's like, okay. It's all about intention. My intention is to learn and to grow and not to offend, right? And if I ask a dumb question, don't take offense to it. I'm really trying to learn here, right? So you gotta start at the top, build a structure, and then start to focus on the culture, building diversity, equity, inclusion into your culture, into the language, into what you do. So it just becomes part of you. It's not an event. It's not a checkbox to say, hey, we checked this DEI thing off. No, it becomes part of who you are in all your conversations, right? So I think that's key. Big or small, I think every company needs to focus on their culture.
There's so much good information there. One thing Macomb Community College has done is that, as Dan said, we started at the top. The president had determined that we are going to make DEI a priority. He put it in the strategic plan. He created what we call an IDEA Council, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Council. And he allowed people to volunteer to be on this council, right? Because there will undoubtedly be people in your organization who want to further these efforts, but maybe up to this point have not been given the opportunity. So when you start to have those conversations, and sometimes they are hard conversations because they're fraught with challenges and uncertainty, you feel uncomfortable sometimes bringing these things up if you haven't done so in the past. But once you get past that initial conversation, those initial few conversations, people can open up and they'll get engaged, and then suddenly you have this initiative going on in your company, and it's going to pay dividends over the long term. But yeah, great information.
Wonderful, thanks guys. Is there anything any of you want to add on the subject of diversity and inclusion before we move on?
Just one quick thing that I wanted to piggyback on is, as it was said, I think it's really important in manufacturing in all industries to make sure that women have the appropriate voice. So from a personal standpoint, I have a wife who is also in human resources. She has been for quite some time, and human resources is predominantly a woman-based career, for the majority. All through school, I was like one or two guys in my classes. So I do think it's important because I think that's a lot of the reasons why people leave positions. And I know that personally because my wife has left a couple positions just because she didn't feel like she had a voice because she was the only woman on the management team. So you know, I just think that's really important, and I know, like, we strive to be different at L&L, and, you know, I have a team of primarily women in human resources, and our executive management team, you know, we just have one woman that's a director, but she's a very strong woman and has a very strong voice, and she's treated equally as everyone else, so I think that's very important.
Maybe the last word for me on this is that as we move forward with DEI efforts in the company, I think it's important, as Dan, I think, alluded to, it can't be just lip service that you give to it, but I think it's extremely important to truly engage in the conversations, to understand the history that has kept individuals from certain positions and you know, essentially relegated them to second-class citizens. When you understand the history and how history has played a role up into the present day and how it's still having an impact, I think then you can perhaps see a little bit better why these things are so important and why the problem exists to the extent that it does right now. And I think so many individuals, because they may not have had to deal with the issues in the past and it may not have been part of their culture to deal with it, they've just overlooked it. But there's just so much there that you can find to understand you know, what's happening today and how we can overcome it. But I think it starts with an understanding and a desire to engage.
Great. Do you want-
Yeah, I know we're moving on.
No, you're.
I can talk about this all day. Just one kind of statement here. There's room at the table. Just because you invite someone else, include someone else to the table, doesn't mean I gotta get up from the table. There's room, right? So there's a lot of conversation around, well, if I, you know, do all this inclusive stuff, where does that leave me? It doesn't take anything away from you. You're actually probably gonna build your career. You're probably going to, the company's gonna look at you for other opportunities because they see a person that is willing to grow and expand themselves and do these things that are uncertain. So I just leave you with that statement to say there is room. There's room for more people at the table than you think. It's been a non-inclusive group for a lot of history, right? But if you expand and get more people at the table, it's just a benefit for the company. It's a benefit for you individually. If you're in leadership, in my opinion, it's a responsibility.
Wonderful. What a great way to end. There's room at the table. I love it. So we're going to move on to education and skill gap development. We're going to start the first question, if all of you guys would be willing to share. What are ways companies can get fresh out of school new hires to functional contributing employees?
Good.
Okay, so just a few things that we do that I think are really important things. So we offer apprenticeships. We do intern programs. So every summer, we post what the positions we have for summer interns, and they range from engineering, finance, human resources, research and development. We have probably 20 interns coming this summer. And a lot of them come back year after year, and then some are hired on when they graduate. So that's been really successful for us. Post-secondary education programs, in-house training. We have co-ops as well. So I think we're establishing some apprenticeships in machine repair. So I think those are some of the really important things that you can do. Also, I think it's important to participate in things like Manufacturing Day, Bring Your Child to Work Day, start to bring them in younger, and so they can see what manufacturing is all about. And then, that gets them interested in internships, and then we've gotten some great employees out of that.
So similar, our formula in recent years now is we start with interns, right? Every summer we have quite a number of interns throughout the company, all different functions. And then, when we go out and hire folks, generally, past couple of years, it's really been a transition from being an intern to becoming full-time. So straight out of school, you have the best opportunity to join Ford Motor Company right now if you've been an intern, because we've already seen how you work, your work ethic, your willingness to learn, etc. Right? So really recruiting really good interns is really, really important to us because we're expecting that transition. And then as you become a full-time hire, we really we put everybody, almost everybody, into what we call the Ford College Graduate Program, FCG. And really that's a program for the first 2 years of your career where you're going to move around different assignments, maybe within that function. So if you hire into manufacturing, you're going to likely stay in manufacturing, but we're going to give you 6 months in the plant, 6 months, in our manufacturing engineering group, etc., rotating around after those 2 years, and we'll find a best fit for you, so that you're not just really jumping into your career in a position that you really didn't know anything about when you were in college. You just went to college to become an engineer. You didn't really know what you were going to be doing at work. So over those first 2 years of your career, we get a mutual understanding of where you're going to best fit.
So, oh, this one's good. And then to me, the most important thing is aligning our new hires with mentors. And that can be, it can be within the organization, it can be somewhere else, but we have to provide them a support group to make sure they're successful. Everybody that comes to our company, we don't want anybody to fail. We're investing in you. We want you to stay for the long term. And for the first couple of years, we have it really well planned, a really good support group. We need to make sure that we continue that. And mentorship to me is the most important thing. And we have a number of different programs where we can have official mentors through our ERGs. Our Women of Ford group has official mentors. But even just on the site, making sure that every experienced leader is mentoring a relatively new employee. So those first few years, making sure that they have somebody to come to that's not their boss, not somebody that they're getting performance reviews from, but somebody that they can really just go talk about, long term, what works, what doesn't work. I got a problem, can you help me solve the problem?
From the educational point of view, I think it's really important to engage the students early, right? I think we all struggle with the, how nebulous manufacturing is. When you talk about manufacturing to young people, they're like, okay, I know the word, but what does that mean? And sometimes they don't get the big picture. Maybe you're just creating a widget, and for a student to come in and to understand that they're going to create a widget really doesn't mean a whole lot. When you can say this widget is part of an automobile, this particular automobile, so they can see the context of what they're doing and why it's important. I think those are the things that will help them have a better understanding of what they're doing in the industry and how it can benefit society as a whole. So I think it's that context that's really going to be important. And you have to engage them early. Right now, there's just so much demand for the students that we have graduating. That is the companies like Jay who will actually come into the classroom and do presentations for students to establish that relationship, that rapport. Because students don't know where they're going to go, and many times they don't know what they're going to do, and sometimes they've gotten into the industry just because somebody said you can make really good money here. But we want them to stay, and establishing those relationships early, I think, is going to help students fare better over the long term.
All right, next question is for Dr. Dane. Is career change and or skills improvement programs available to promote growth at your company?
Yes. So lots of opportunities for skilling. We do things on the leadership side with our one-on-ones. We call them one-on-one connects. And those are development conversations, right? So in those specific conversations with our employees, we're talking about what does their career path look like?
what skills do they need to get to those various opportunities. And then for those that are coming into the company, we try to have those early conversations with folks that are new to the company. Here's where you're starting, but here's kind of the path that you could travel. And there's different paths, right? So there's the leadership path, and not everybody wants to go into leadership. And then there's the engineering side of the house, more technical side of the house, where there's a path there. What honestly I'd like to see DPP do a little bit better is to define those paths. Sometimes it is who you know, that you hear the information first. And kind of get to the position first.
I could give you the first 45 minutes.
Once
I can
you
give
get to
you
a
the
certain
first
level, it
45
becomes more
minutes.
difficult to move. And so we need to do a better job, in my mind, of kind of laying those out. I'm having conversations with my employees right now. I've got people on my team that's been at ETE for 45 years. I've got 6 of my 8 people that report directly to me that have been there over 33 years. So what do you do with their growth and development? They're like, I've seen it all, I've done it all. What do you got for me, right? And so those are great conversations to have. They're like, I'm not ready. Well, my teammate has been there 45 years. He is ready to retire. But other folks are like, I'm not ready to retire. But I've been in this seat for a while. What do we do? And I don't want to go into leadership, which is kind of the natural thing. And once you reach a level, it's like, oh, now you got to go to leadership. So we're trying to figure that part out. But we've got different tools we use for skill assessment, for skill development, particularly on the technical side. So we use those tools to help people learn, continue to learn and grow.
Wonderful. The next few questions are for Don, as it's education and we're at MCC. So how is MCC transforming the choices and curriculum of educational offerings to support the reskilling of the workforce?
Yeah, we take this very seriously because we know, we're right there in the hub of the auto industry and manufacturing technology. And it's really important for us to make sure that we keep our finger on the pulse of industry. One thing we are doing is we're undergoing right now a $40 million renovation of our technical building. And the largest renovation in the college's history. It happens to be in the skilled trades, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing areas. And so we're really looking forward to moving into this new building next summer. That's going to give us new equipment, state-of-the-art equipment, brand new labs. And so that's one thing we're